All right, we continue now our coverage of the expanded FBI insider trading probe, now with a lawyer who expects more arrests and more government scrutiny of hedge funds in general. Seth Berenzweig is managing partner at Berenzweig Leonard, a law firm that specializes in corporate and executive compliance issues. He also worked for the FDIC on the Drexel-Burnham-Lambert case. Thanks for joining us, Seth. Let me ask you, something I wanted to ask John Coffey, but I can just as well ask you. Do you think that we need more drawn-out regulation, more specific regulation here, or are the lines drawn very clearly between what's the difference between really channel checks and inside information?
Well, I think the regulations in terms of what constitutes insider trading is all set, and I don't think that there's a lot of further clarification that's required on that. I do think that there is a lot of regulation going on right now with the new rules at the SEC for regulation of hedge funds. That's a big change, and that's something that will be coming into effect this past summer. I think that as a bottom line, when you put it all together, the federal government is making the message loud and clear. The doors to the private casinos on Wall Street are going to be closing. There's a new enforcement afoot. We have a new environment for corporate compliance. So I think that companies and employees need to be aware of this moving forward.
All right. So as this investigation moves forward, Seth, how big a case do you think it ultimately will be, and how far-reaching?
Well, I think this is really just the tip of the iceberg. Obviously, all networking companies and all these expert networking firms are not going to per se be illegal, and there's an appropriate amount of market research that's going to be compliant. But I think it's very clear for what's happening here that the feds are going to be lifting up the hood on this, and I think that you'll be seeing a lot of more news on this coming forward. This is going to start with these networking firms. Some of them, of course, are entirely legitimate, but you're going to be seeing more indictments, I predict. The grand juries are probably looking at a lot of information, and there's a new environment of corporate compliance here in Washington, D.C. as well as in New York. So this is going to be an issue that's going to be expanding. It's not going to be alleviating anytime soon. All
right, so the tip of the iceberg, in your view, does it expand to hedge funds specifically?
Absolutely. I think that's going to be the next target. I think that's really where the federal government is looking. That's one of the main areas. We know that there's a major trial that's going to be happening in the middle of January regarding a major hedge fund figure. And I think that the government is also aware of a very important fact here. There's been a complete lack of confidence in the American stock market. And the only way that the retail investor is going to be coming back into the market with confidence is if they see, for lack of a better phrase, some heads rolling. Now, there are people out there in the marketplace and in business that are doing things appropriately. But if you don't weed out this kind of problem and weed out the fraud, then you're going to continue to have a lack of underlying confidence in the stock market, and then you're not going to see a turnaround in that. So I do believe it's the tip of the iceberg, and the hedge funds are going to continue to be in the crosshairs of the federal government.
Is there a connection, by the way? The Rajaratnam Galleon case and this, I mean, are very different cases, aren't they? I mean, obviously both insider trading, but there were no expert networks involved.
That's true. That's true. And the only reason why I mentioned the case regarding Raj that's coming up in January is because that ultimately will end up in the same place that I think a lot of these investigations are going right now. Because at the end of the day, if you have a firm like this in California that's going to be wedding these consultants together, at the end of the day, when you take a look at what the California firm did, they took these insiders that clearly breached their fiduciary duty, if you believe the allegations, and they connected them with these people that are in the hedge funds. So if this evidence comes through, and if they continue to cooperate with the government, you will see indictments, you will see criminal complaints regarding people who are running the hedge funds, and I think that that's going to be something that may happen within the next couple of weeks.
So I asked this of Professor Coffey in terms of what he expects next. I'm just curious what you think you're going to expect to start to see. What will be the next set of headlines here?
Well, the next set of headlines, I think, will be twofold. First of all, I predict that you'll see a lot more heads rolling in the hedge fund community. The enforcement mechanisms are going to be continuing to lift up the hood and looking very closely at the leaders of hedge funds. The second thing that you'll be seeing in the first half of next year is some major changes coming through SEC, federal regulations involving hedge funds, new registration requirements. And that's going to be a big change because for many years, the hedge funds have had virtually no regulation requirements at all. That regulation is going to be turned completely upside down. So you're going to see major changes in regulations in Washington, and you're going to be seeing more arrests and more enforcement and compliance issues in both New York and in Washington, D.C.
Does that also mean then you're going to see a lot of the smaller hedge funds in particular shutting down as a result?
Well, that certainly is possible, not only because of enforcement, but under the new SEC regulations. We're not going to get too lost in the weeds here, but under the Bank Reform Act, even the smaller hedge funds are going to have a responsibility to either register with the SEC in Washington or to have a parallel registration process that's going to be taking place with the local authorities at the state level, and then those states are coordinating with the SEC. There's going to be increased enforcement, increased transparency. A lot of these things have been happening in dark rooms where people have not known what's going on, and now you're going to have the lights turned on so that people will know what's being invested and what's going on out there behind the scenes.
All right, hey, Seth, thanks so much for joining us. Seth Berenzweig there from Berenzweig Leonard.